Welcome to Her Success Matters, a podcast exploring how advisors can work together to build a pathway for women to succeed in financial services. I am your host, Christine Shaw, CEO of Investment News. This podcast will give you a rare insider access to the top financial services executives who are taking action to break down the barriers for the next generation of female advisors. I am honored to be joined by Mindy Diamond, the CEO of Diamond Consultants, one of the nation's leading financial advisor recruiting firms. So, Mindy, it's such a pleasure having you with us here today. I am so happy and honored to be hosting you because you just surpassed a major milestone, 100,000 downloads of your podcast. So, congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here and thank you for the congratulations.
So, Mindy, in the industry, you are known as a consultant, a recruiter, a thought leader, a coach, a trainer, and of course, a champion for personal growth and a life of congruence. So now more than ever, the landscape has changed. Entrepreneurship, innovation, big thinking, it's the most important thing for financial advisors. And so nobody is better than you to discuss these themes. So I'd love to jump right in and tell our listeners a little bit more about your background and what you do for this industry.
Sure. Thank you for asking. So I started Diamond Consultants on my bedroom floor literally 23 years ago. And today, I think we are one of the leading recruiting and consulting firms for financial advisors around the country. And our business serves two constituencies. On the one hand, we place financial advisors that are looking to make a move from one firm to another, one model to another. So whether that be to move from a wirehouse to an independent firm or wirehouse to wirehouse or whatever it may be. But in the last 10 years or so, as the independent landscape has really expanded and M&A has really been hot, we do a lot of work within the independent landscape in coaching and advising independent business owners about how to grow inorganically. We help them with inorganic growth to identify inorganic growth targets. And in general, we are a coach and consultant and recruiter all wrapped up in one.
And you've done some amazing work and you're so well known. And for those for everyone listening who may not be following you on your podcast, I highly recommend they do that. It's really a lot of great information and you have some amazing guests. So congratulations to you on that.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I just need to tell you that I started that podcast 2.5 years, it'll actually be 3 years in November, after having had a conversation with probably my fifth advisor that week, who we were having, 2-hour conversations, which was my pleasure, by the way. Those are my favorite kind of conversations of all, but really educating him on what it means to be independent. He said to me, why am I watching so many of my well-respected colleagues going independent? Why specifically did Bob or Sam or Phil make that move? And there were so many big deals to be had. And why would somebody move without it? And how do the economics work? And all of those questions. So on a whim, I said, let me do a podcast. And I'm going to do one to really answer sort of the top questions that advisors ask. I figured I'd do 5 episodes and be done. But what wound up happening was it caught the attention of the industry, of advisors, of the industry's leaders, of thought leaders, et cetera. And what started with an intention to do 5 episodes wound up being now, I think we're at episode 68 or 69. And as you said, we just passed 100,000 downloads. What that tells me is just where the puck is heading, how much of an interest there is in independence and how much advisor mindset has changed. So I am grateful and humbled beyond belief for the response we've had to it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I just want to get into some of the content for today's podcast, which is really, I do believe that this innovation and change we're seeing is allowing a lot more flexibility for financial advisors, which is amazing. And in fact, that's one of the barriers that women have had in terms of choosing this industry, is the ability to have more flexibility. So do you see this change and this newfound independence and freedom and flexibility as a driver to helping attract more females into financial advisement?
Yeah, so it was always an anathema to me that there weren't more women financial advisors. I mean, the stats are incredibly low. And it's anathema to me because the truth of the matter is that the women financial advisors are amongst the best in the industry. And that's not an indictment of male financial advisors. It's just to say that being a financial advisor seems like the ideal profession for a woman. It's about being consultative and a good listener and thoughtful. And the truth of the matter is that, and certainly, we are recording this smack in the middle of COVID crisis, and we're all working, many of us are working from home. I certainly am. And, what we're hearing from financial advisors, male and female alike, is just how productive they are, how much they realize they have not missed a beat in the last 4 months now of working from home. This career is all about flexibility and freedom. It's all about eating what you kill. It's all about sort of running a business and counseling clients in your own image and based upon how you want to live your life and what's best for clients. And the independent space has made it so it's all about the advisor having ultimate control and freedom and flexibility to run his business and service his or her clients the way he or she wants to. And so I think there's not a better career offering flexibility than being a financial advisor.
So as a recruiter, what kinds of things can you tell to both individuals and or companies that really want to attract more female advisors into their practice or as individuals from a career standpoint?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, every firm, whether it be Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley or the smallest RIA managing 50 million in assets, every firm wants to increase their diversity numbers. And every firm specifically wants to recruit more female financial advisors. And not just to fill some diversity quota, but probably more importantly, because they know just what I said, that women make great financial advisors. And with women controlling more and more of the wealth in the country, it makes sense that firms have more female financial advisors. So there's not a firm in the land, large or small, that isn't interested in recruiting more female advisors. That said, a couple of things. One, there's a saying, you can't be what you can't see. So it's hard to recruit female financial advisors if you don't already have female financial advisors on your staff. And that where does that leave me if I don't? But it's very important to continue to make that a priority if you don't already have them. The second thing is that, it's women want to connect with women, and women want to understand how women thrive within the organization. So many firms have specific female working groups where women are able to share about typically women, female issues, multitasking, working from home, being a single mom, whatever it may be, sharing ideas. And a lot of firms who do that do really, really well. The other thing I'd say is that it's important to have women in leadership as well. That's that whole you can't be what you can't see. That a financial advisor coming in wants to know that there's a path to partnership or leadership. And so it's important that women have central roles in an organization and are part of the recruiting process, that women can meet with other women and see that a woman is, there's a good place for a woman within the organization.
No, and you hit on some really important points because, well, first of all, it's, we're in a numbers industry. It is about numbers and it is about metrics and success. And as you eloquently stated, that having a more diverse workforce provides better results. It's been proven over and over and over again. So just understanding that and understanding where a lot of the wealth is coming from in the US and how that's controlled, that's a big part of it. And then I think what you were saying, and we've seen in some of these conversations, is a lot of times if women do choose this as a career, the pathway to advancement has been challenging. And there's a lot of articles and research that suggests it's about that midway point in their career where they get stuck because they either have to pause because they maybe want to raise a family and don't see the support, and or there just aren't a lot of female leaders or mentors within the organization to help them achieve that career success that they want within their organization. So you as really an independent person for the past 20 some odd years starting your company, you didn't have that per se. So how did you personally find that and keep yourself motivated and going through this?
Yeah. Well, for one, I was always self-motivated. For two, I think that, I started this business it's kind of funny. I started this business working from home, and now I'm 22 and a half years later, I'm still working from home, or I'm back working from home again. I'm dying actually to get back into our office, but nonetheless, I think that it's absolutely about recognizing what you need and then surrounding yourself with the right people. So that started for me. I recognized probably 2 years in that I was onto something, that what I had originally started doing as a hobby, I had been a successful recruiter in the accounting field. So when I was looking to go back to work almost 23 years ago, when my youngest son was 5 years old, going back to be a recruiter made sense. And I had a very good friend at the time who was a manager for Morgan Stanley, and he's the one that got me into the business. And I was successful in loving it and began to realize that, oh my God, I'm onto something. There's something here. So I began to hire additional recruiters, and 3 of them, they are still with me 23 years later. They're all here 20 to 22 years, all women. The only actual men in our organization, my husband, Howard, who is my partner, joined me. He'd been an attorney probably 15 years ago. And my son, who is a partner as well, joined about 5 years ago, my older son, after a stint in the consulting field for financial services. But probably one of the most pivotal hires I made was hiring who is now our office manager or director of office operations, Shelley Musio. She came in and really recognized what I was a great recruiter, but had no idea how to set up technology. I was keeping my records on a little yellow pad with Post-its, and she really professionalized the business. So for me, the flexibility for me, not only to run the business that as I want to run it, but to have the flexibility to live my best life all the way around. And my best life means I'm living my best business life because I'm running a business that's completely congruent with my values. And I'm running a business that allows me the flexibility and freedom to live a good life overall, to balance work life, to have plenty of free time and really do what I love and work on the things that I love and don't have to do the things that I don't love, because I was able to surround myself with the right people who could do the things I wasn't great at or didn't want to do better than me.
That's such an important thing to talk about, because I think what happens is a lot of women in particular, they feel like they can't ask for help, or somehow that shows weakness. And it's interesting because some of the most successful women, including myself, that I know who have families and all that, it is about the support system they have both in their workplace and at home. And it's important to acknowledge that this whole myth of, oh, you can have it all, and if you're not being superwoman, somehow that means you're not as good. And that's just not true. And I love that you recognize that you needed a strong, solid office manager. And you have, it sounds like, a great family support system, both in your business, which is very fortunate, as well as at home.
Yeah, well, definitely. So first of all, my husband has always been my greatest champion from day one. And there's no way I could have done what I did without his support. Not just support, rah, rah, go get him, build a business, but his support in terms of picking up the slack to, my kids were young when I started the business 23 years ago. So, he was picking up the slack to, we would tag team who went to see one son on one baseball field and who saw the other at the tennis courts or whatever it was, or carpooling them to tutoring or whatever after school activities. So there was that. For me, it was never about feeling weakened by asking for help. I've always been one that's actually I'm the first one to reach out and want to get support I need where and when I need it. I think it was more about one, feeling somewhat overwhelmed, like how do you even go about finding what you need? And two, it was for me for a long time, it took probably a good 5 years until I really began to view the business as a business. And it wasn't until I really owned the fact that I was a business owner and not just somebody that has sort of had a hobby who happened to be making some money, that I began to give myself the permission to hire the people that I needed. As long as in my head I was thinking about this as a hobby, I found it hard to think about going out and spending money to hire people to support something that wasn't a real business.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that talking about it in those terms, being overwhelmed, because that's also a theme that we hear a lot, that it can be overwhelming when you're balancing everything and having that, the having the wherewithal to say, I need this kind of support or I need this help. That's great. And someone is a strong leader like yourself and successful, to hear that is fantastic. And I think encouraging to other women who are also experiencing similar feelings or emotions as they navigate their career.
Yeah, it's worth noting. I I am a successful entrepreneur today, but I would never have described myself as someone having entrepreneurial DNA 23 years ago. And I would, if you suggested to me 23 years ago when I began recruiting on my bedroom floor that I was going to be building a business and not just recruiting sort of advisors in my spare time, not only wouldn't I have believed you, but I think it would have paralyzed me. For me, it was about being really, really good at recruiting. I had been a successful recruiter in the accounting field. I began to have success recruiting financial advisors. I began to sort of find my way of communicating with advisors, a way that felt right for me. I began, the whole notion of treating people the way I wanted to be treated and asking smart questions and being really rooted in adding value as opposed to trying to sell them on something. So once I got good enough at that, and then I began to give myself permission to say, well, I'm turning a lot of business down as a one-man band. I can't handle all of this business. So I'll go out and hire someone, still not ready to call it a business. And then, if there's still more business I'm turning away, I'll go out and hire somebody else. And before I knew it, I had 5 people working for me. And all of a sudden, like 5 years in, I began to say, wow, I really have a business. That in and of itself was overwhelming and incredibly scary for me. When I was a little girl, I remember going to play with my cousins, who were also young, in my grandmother's jewelry box. She had a whole box full of junk jewelry, costume jewelry. And, I picture myself as this little girl playing dress up with jewelry that didn't match and, lipstick all over my face and in high-heeled shoes that were too big, but acting as if. And that's how I got to a point. It wasn't probably until the 10-year mark. I was a good recruiter from day one, but I never really embraced myself as a good businesswoman until probably 10 years in.
Yes, it's funny. Well, we hear a lot too about imposter syndrome, where women in particular just don't feel like they've got what it takes, and then they have these aha moments. And I think I just got some visual of you as a little girl sitting there playing, and I think we all have those moments. So good for you, and it's a testament to you that your original hires are still with your firm and that you have an all-female firm. So. Let's pivot a little bit, talking about, you mentioned about your husband being your biggest champion. Let's talk about the roles of mentors and how a woman can find a mentor, or how we can give back and become mentors to females.
Yeah. So for me, my husband's my biggest cheerleader, bar none, but I'm not sure necessarily he was my one single mentor. I think it's much more about, for me, I've always been an avid reader and always a curious learner, always. So I'm constantly reading, listening to podcasts, I am learning things every day. Just before we did this recording, I run my staff meetings on Wednesdays. And I was saying to them that just yesterday I was listening to the Guy Raz, How I Built This podcast. And he'd interviewed John Foley, who's the founder of Peloton, for the second time. And it was a resilience episode about how Peloton has exploded and reinvented itself during this whole COVID crisis. And I'm on the treadmill and I'm like, pausing the treadmill so I can take notes because I'm hearing things that he's saying that, oh, I'm going to say that, or I'm going to do that. So I'm a major learner. And so my mentors are, I would say, my maternal grandmother, who started a business. She was an immigrant from Russia who didn't have a college education and essentially built what became the largest women's and children's clothing store in Jersey City many years before it was in vogue for women to go to work. Definitely my mentor. My father had been a successful businessman, and I certainly learned confidence and entrepreneurial spirit from him. But I can't tell you it was any one of those people. It's just, I learn from everywhere and everything. My husband says I have sparkly bits. I'm constantly listening to something and sort of thinking about a way that I can integrate what I've learned into whatever it is I'm working on in the moment. And as far as being a mentor, I think that one of the most important things for women is to give themselves permission to step into their greatness. Somebody said that to me many years ago, and that may in and of itself have been the game changer that really gave me permission, say 5 or 10 years ago, to really begin to think about this as a business as opposed to just a hobby. Stepping into your greatness means that I don't need to fake small or play small so I don't make somebody else feel bad. I don't need to believe that I'm not entitled to make mistakes. It means that I'm entitled to be authentically me. And that, for me, that was the number one lesson, was building a business that was authentically me, not trying to fill a quota, not trying to do some sales pitch that somebody else thought was right, not doing it the way everybody else had done it, but really doing it my way. And in mentoring, and I've mentored many young women along the way, many young women, it's teaching them that learn to step into your greatness, be a good listener, a curious lifelong learner, and, don't give up. Don't give up.
I love that. First, I'm still smiling about your husband's comment about your sparkly bits. I just love that. That's a great comment. And yeah, I do think stepping into your greatness, it's a fantastic way of putting it. And it's very motivating because I do think sometimes we get stuck in our limiting beliefs and we don't lean into the opportunities ahead. And so to see someone like yourself who has done it and achieved great success and where you're at, that's very inspirational, which is what this is all about. So also in terms of thinking big, I know that, you had a recent article in Forbes about big thinking and how you do your best big thinking. Obviously on the treadmill, we've just learned you're unapologetically curious and a learner, but tell us what you think the big thinking is right now and the moments in the industry.
In the big thinking with respect to the financial services industry, is that what you mean?
Yeah, and where we're at today.
Yeah, well, I think that advisor mindset has really shifted. And I think that the most successful firms recognize that and are meeting advisors where they are, as opposed to having a corporate agenda and trying to shove the advisors into the agenda or shove advisors into a box. Recognizing that this breakaway movement, the movement of advisors from the traditional brokerage world as employees to independence, is here to stay. It's where the puck is heading. It's accelerating. And the reason for that is because the change in advisor mindset means that advisors value freedom, flexibility, and control more than anything. Now, that doesn't mean that every advisor wants to be independent, but it means that even if you're the CEO of Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or UBS or fill in the blank, any big brokerage firm, and you don't necessarily offer an independent model, it doesn't mean that you're going to lose all your advisors. It means the truth of the matter is advisors want to stay put. the path of least resistance is to stay right where you are. So if you know that, all advisors want is to be heard. They don't want to have to fulfill a corporate agenda. They want to be heard, especially the biggest advisors and the best advisors. They want to know that their ideas matter and what's important to them, and that the things that they're being asked to do are being done because it's what's best for clients and best for the advisor, not because it's best for firm. To me, that's the biggest thinking of all, to meet advisors where they are. The big firms would have a whole lot less attrition if they learned to do that. And I think that it's why we're going to continue to see so much movement toward independence, because if advisors don't find that in the traditional space, they're going to seek to build it on their own.
Yeah, no, those are really important takeaways for basically all firms and leaning into those ideas. So some of the key takeaways then, Mindy, just to kind of review our conversation, I think is helpful, is for firms who are trying to attract more female advisors, it's, showing through leadership. You can't be what you can't see. I love that comment and that quote. So ensuring that there are more women within the ranks and leadership of the companies, and women enjoy other women, and having those communities and more women attracts more women for internal purposes and for building that camaraderie within an organization. And then, of course, you've made the point too, and in your own podcast, about freedom, flexibility, and control. So I think those are all great pieces of advice and insights, as well as to the results. The results and the numbers don't lie. And by having more women in the firms and as advisors, it changed the results in a positive way and provides a better outcome for the investor, which is what we're all here to do. So that's fantastic. And of course, my final question that I love to ask all my guests is, I would love to hear in your words why you think her success matters.
Because I think that women traditionally are taught or wind up figuring that they're meant to play small. And playing small actually not only doesn't serve the woman herself, but it doesn't serve the world. And so her success matters means that we all lift each other up, that there's nothing more empowering than being in the presence of a badass, authentic woman, a woman who embraces her greatness, who is honest and humble and just is authentic, is real, and can admit when she's wrong and is unapologetic about being successful or good at what she does. And I think that because there's been such a history of women playing small, it's incredibly important that a podcast like this teaches women, shows other women who may be younger or at a different place in their career or in some sort of an emotional crisis and not feeling particularly strong, that we lift each other up. I think that's the best gift that women can give each other.
Excuse me, I couldn't have said that better myself, Mindy. And now I will forever have these fantastic images in my head of you as a young girl wearing your messy makeup and your big shoes, and then also going from that to launching your firm on your bedroom floor, and then to see where you have landed today. It's incredibly motivating and inspiring, and it should give a lot of hope to women out there that absolutely you can do it, and to continue to think big and be curious and constantly learn. So I love it. It's great. It's a great conversation. Yeah.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much. And I thank you for this podcast. I think it's an important one, and I am delighted you're doing it.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Her Success Matters. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available, and share this podcast with others that believe her success matters.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Investment News. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.